chapter 3, and we're going to look at verses 22 to 27 and preach tonight on this thought, a good God. And we can say that with great confidence tonight. We have a good God. And, there's a lot of misunderstandings about God. If we were to go out on the street or into a shopping mall and ask people what they thought about God, there's a lot of misconceptions about God. I feel like a lot of people that are kind of unchurched or have gotten out of church and just don't go anymore, a lot of them have a view of God as being an angry God. But we have a good God. And we're going to look tonight here at Lamentations chapter 3, verses 22 to 27, just really kind of go verse by verse down through that short passage in Lamentations 3 and see that he is indeed a good God. When a kid goes to the doctor, a child goes to get a shot, he does not understand the pain, but he trusts his parent holding him. I remember when our kids would go and you'd hold them, you knew what was coming. They didn't know what was coming yet, but you knew what was coming. And the doctor or the nurse, they're talking, and all of a sudden they've got that needle, and it goes. and mom and dad have to console and comfort, and they can trust mom and dad. And we don't always understand what God's doing. Sometimes we're like a child that doesn't know what's about to happen. And sometimes in life we don't know what's about to happen. But we can trust who he is. We can trust our God, that he is a good God. Jeremiah never gave up on God, and more importantly, God never gave up on Jeremiah. And that is so true in my life and in your life. God never gives up on us. Now, hopefully you can say, I've never given up on God. It might be that you say, I did give up on God for a while, but I'm back. But aren't we thankful that God never gives up on us? And each of these 6 verses that we're going to read here, we see that Jeremiah highlights the consistent goodness of God. And so let's look here at verse 22 and read down to verse 27, and just notice as Jeremiah is speaking here, he's highlighting the consistent goodness of God in his life. In verse 22, he says, "It is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, saith my soul. Therefore will I hope in him. The Lord is good unto them that wait for him, to the soul that seeketh him. It is good that a man should both hope and quietly wait for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for a man that he bear the yoke in his youth." And so you can hear it in Jeremiah's writings here, that Jeremiah had learned the goodness of God, even in the midst of deep suffering. And you read the book of Jeremiah, the book that precedes Lamentations. And Jeremiah endured persecution. Really very few, I think, in this life have endured the persecution that Jeremiah endured. He endured rejection. Rejection sometimes is as hard as persecution. Feeling all alone, feeling as if you're the only one, nobody cares and nobody understands. He endured great sorrow. Yet, Jeremiah declared in Jeremiah chapter 20, verse 9, "I was weary with forbearing, and I could not stay." He said, I could not quit. We can kind of understand here what Jeremiah is saying is, I wanted to quit. I just couldn't quit. Why? Because he had learned that God's grace is sufficient in every situation. He said, God is too good. He's too good to me for me to quit on him. The truth is, anything beyond and including not going to hell is the mercy of God extended to us. Think of it, anything that God would do towards you and me is God's mercy toward us. We can think of that we must never lose sight of the big picture, that God is good and his love sustains us. And that really is kind of what the message is all about tonight, the goodness of God. And this passage is all about the goodness of God. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 14, the Apostle Paul said it this way. He said, "It is the love of Christ." And then he goes on and he said, "that constraineth us." It's what keeps us going. It's what motivates us. It's what drives us. It's what pushes us when we feel like we just can't go anymore. The love of Christ constraineth us. Just like Jeremiah, there may be times that we do not want to do the right thing. I want to have you raise your hand on that one. Has there ever been a time you didn't want to do the right thing? But the truth is, there's lots of times we don't want to do the right thing. We're like Jonah. We want to be angry. We want to do the wrong things instead of the right things. Sometimes we may even feel that we're at the point of quitting. There have been times that I've come to church thinking, I remember coming to church thinking, this might be the last time I ever come to church. and yet God encourages us, and God strengthens us, and God keeps us going. And so you can be at the point of quitting, but the love of Christ keeps us going. And Jeremiah, kind of at the end of his life, as he's lamenting, as he's remembering all these things that have happened to him, you know what his conclusion is? God's good. God is so good to me. God's goodness is so great to me. God's grace has been extended to me. God's goodness has been extended to me. God has taught me things. God is good. And so we have a good God. Notice in verses 22 to 24, just if we summarize, we could say that God is our portion. God is our portion. Matthew Henry, he's a Bible commentator. I use other commentaries, but I do like Matthew Henry's commentary, and I reference it a lot of times when I'm studying. But he said about this passage, he said, if God be your portion, you have more than enough, though you have nothing else. I've heard people say it more modern. People will say it today, when you find out that God is all you have, you find out that God is all you need. That He is our portion. If God is your portion, then you have more than enough. We can just end it right there, right? If I have God, I have more than enough. Jeremiah here, he makes a personal declaration. These are his own conclusions. This is his own summary of his life. In verse 22, he says, "It is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed." It's the Lord's mercy. He looked over his life, and he looked at all the things that had happened to him and all the things that he had went through, and he said, it's of the Lord's mercies that I'm still here. It's of the Lord's mercies that I'm still around. God has taken care of me. And then he goes on, he kind of declares further. Notice what he says. He said, they are new every morning, in verse 23. Every morning. In the Bible, we talk about the very words of God are pure. I believe exactly, literally what Jeremiah said, I believe is what God's trying to tell us. His mercies are new every morning. You have God's mercies for today, and tomorrow they're new, and you have God's mercies all over again. And the next day, and the next day, and the next day. When God is your portion, you have more than enough. In verse 24, he says that. He said, the Lord is my portion. God was real, and God was personal to Jeremiah. And the goal certainly is, if you walk with God and you spend time in His Word and you try to pray and you're faithful to go to His house and you say, I want to live my life guided by the Bible. I want to try to be a Christian. There's things that I want to try to do. There's things that I don't want to do. I want to live the Christian life. And Jeremiah, as he did that, what he was saying was, God has been real to me and He's been personal to me. And every single one of us can say that, right? God is personal to me. And what God does for me is not the same thing He does for you. Because I don't have the same problems that you have, and I don't have the same circumstances that you have. I don't have the same struggles that you have. But God's mercies are new every morning to each of us. And so He was real and He was personal to Jeremiah. David made a similar profession. In Psalm 23:1, that great 23rd Psalm, it starts out, David says, the Lord is my shepherd. He was real. He was personal to David. And so my question tonight is the Lord real to you like this in your life? He's a person. I think of my wife. She's real to me. I think of my kids. They're real to me. I think of friends and people that I know. They're real to me. God ought to be just as real as anybody else is to you. He ought to be personal to you. He's a part of your life. He ought to be the center of your life. You say, He's real to me. Your portion should not be what you have. So many people get their portion wrapped up in this life and what they have. Their portion is their house, or their portion is their cars, or their possessions. That becomes their identity. But for a Christian, our portion, our identity should not be in what we have, but it ought to be in who we have. And who we have is Jesus Christ. Say, He's my portion. He's what I need. A.W. Tozer wrote and said, he who has God for his treasure has all things in one. God's everything. You have all things in the one, in Jesus Christ. Not only does he give a personal declaration, but he had a proven demonstration. God had proven to himself, had proven to Jeremiah over and over and over. Jeremiah had really all through his life, there had been a proven demonstration of God's goodness in Jeremiah's life. That God sustains, God secures, God supplies every day. I trust that as a believer, as a Christian, that you say, I can see God every day in my life. If you cannot see God every day in your life, it's not because God's not there. Let me just say it real straightforward. It's because you're not looking for Him. You're not looking for His hand because He's there every day. Jeremiah realized that God has demonstrated His goodness to me over and over and over. And if you're a Christian and if you've walked with God, you ought to be able to say the same thing, that God's goodness has been demonstrated in my life. And I can tell you about the goodness of God. Here's what He's done for me, and here's how He's been there for me, and here's how He's supplied for me. And those same things, the sustaining and the securing and the supplying. Notice what He says in verse 22, His compassions fail not. The word compassion means to love, to care. God cares about us. He loves us. He knows what's going on in our life. He knows what you're facing. And that's not to belittle the things that you're facing. It's not to belittle the problems that you have. But it's just to say, as much as you know that you have the problem, God knows that you have the problem. And God cares about you, and He's compassionate, and He's caring, and He's loving. His compassions fail not. Notice what He said in verse 23. He said, great is thy faithfulness. Faithful, we know what it means to be faithful. A spouse will tell you what it is to be faithful. A banker will tell you what it is to be faithful. Bill collectors will tell you what it is to be faithful. We know what it means to be faithful. Jeremiah said, I look back over my life, and you know what God has demonstrated? He's faithful. He is faithful to me in my life. And you ought to be able to do the same. You ought to be able to come to the same conclusion. In my life, we might be honest and say, I've not always been faithful to God, but He has always been faithful to me. He has always been there for me. Great is thy faithfulness. We may fluctuate, but God is faithful. God is unchanging. Malachi 3:6, for I am the Lord, I change not. Therefore ye sons of Jacob are not consumed. Aren't you glad that God is unchanging? I've noticed I'm starting to get just a little older. As I get a little older, I see things are changing faster than I want them to, and in more ways than I want them to. And things change, and we change, but God doesn't change. He is unchanging. The Bible says, Hebrews 13:8, not only is He unchanging, He's unwavering. Jesus Christ, the same yesterday and today and forever. Great is thy faithfulness. We have a faithful God. He is the same. No matter our circumstances, God is the same. He's unchanging. He's unwavering. Jeremiah was focused. His hope was fixed on God. He said in verse 24, the Lord is my portion, saith my soul. Therefore will I hope in Him. A year ago we had our theme was the word hope. This year it's focus. So I put both of them together in that one point. His focus was that his hope was fixed on God. He said, that's where my hope's at. My hope is in God. That word hope, that Bible word hope, it's much like our modern word today, confidence. Our confidence is in God. Our hope is in God. Jeremiah, he wasn't saying my hope is in me, my hope's in my abilities, my hope's in my money, my hope's in my president. No, he said my hope is in God. Because I have a good God. I have a faithful God, that His compassions fail not. Great is thy faithfulness. The only place that you can have complete confidence is in God. In this life where everything changes, the only person that never changes, God. God never changes. You can have complete confidence in Him. So number one, God is our portion. I see in verse 25 and 26, God rewards the patient. So number one, God is our portion. Number two, God rewards the patient. My personality is just a little different, a little off. I always say we're all a little weird. Just we're weird in different ways. I was thinking of you ever think about the ark, the snail? The snail moves a little slower than the elephant. The elephant got on the ark, lion got on the ark, the snail. I'm just thinking, you ever watched a snail? I remember at camp at McCormick's Creek, kids would find snails, they'd put them on those picnic tables, and it took forever. I'm thinking, how long did it take a snail to get to the ark? I don't even know why I'm thinking about it, but it took him 120 years to build it. Maybe the snail got a head start on everybody. Noah said, okay, snails, you got to start heading to the ark soon. It took some perseverance, right? It took a while. There are things in this life that take a while. They take longer than others. I like when things happen fast. I like when things happen right now. The truth is, life doesn't always work that way. Life doesn't always happen right now. Life doesn't always happen super quick. We see the painful process. Jeremiah learned through hardship. We don't learn every lesson the easy way. Some lessons we learn the hard way, and often we learn the same way that Jeremiah learned, through difficulty. I've come to the conclusion that a lot of times I learn more in the difficulties than I do in the successes. I don't like them. I don't like the valleys, right? If life has mountaintops and valleys, I like the mountaintops a lot better than the valleys. But I've learned that I learn more in those hard times. Why? Because it's just natural that in the hard times we have nowhere else to look but up. We've already exhausted every possibility, every resource, called every person we know. There's literally no one else to go to but to go to God. And so during those times, we depend on God. I find that your prayer life becomes a lot more real. When you're really going through it, you know what you're doing? You're praying all the time. You're seeking, when things are going really well, just natural tendency is we don't spend as much time praying because we don't have as much to pray about. But when we're struggling, we're doing a lot of praying. And we're getting close to God, and we're spending time in His Word, and we want to be in His presence. Romans chapter 5, verse 3 says, and not only so, but we glory in tribulations also, knowing that tribulation worketh patience. The word tribulation, it's defined as affliction, distress, pressure. Waiting is often required. I don't know about anybody else, I just know about Brandon, but I am a bad waiter. I'm a bad waiter if it's at a restaurant. I'm a bad waiter if it's at the gas station. I don't know a good place that I am a good waiter. I'm just not very good at waiting. I like things to happen right now and just on to the next thing. Now, I'm not quite as fast as Viola. She just runs everywhere. I'm a slow walker, and so I take my time walking, and then when I get there, I want it to happen. She's just going all the time. I'm always saying, Viola, you got to slow down. You got to walk slower. I want to walk with you, and you got to walk slower. I can't walk that fast. That has nothing to do with the point, but just that we're slow sometimes, or I'm slow sometimes, and that might be where I'm good at waiting, just in walking. But waiting is often required. It's not fun to wait. It's not fun for things to say, I want it to happen. I need it to happen. God, do you hear me? I'm begging you for it to happen. And it seems like God's answer just keeps coming back, wait, not now. God's timing is not always our timing. A farmer or gardener doesn't dig up the seed every day to check on its growth. We've been trying to grow wildflowers. Again, this does have a little bit of something to do with the point. We've been trying to grow wildflowers and put them in the ground, and I know you got to wait a couple days for them to come up, and they just don't seem to keep coming up. We keep trying to plant them, so I don't know if we don't have enough sun or what. But I do know enough to know this: you don't put the seed in the ground and the next day dig it up and say, what's going on with the seed? No, you got to leave it there, and you got to wait, and you got to be patient. And you put a tomato plant in the ground, and it grows up, and you see a little blossom, and the next thing you know, a little bitty tiny green tomato, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then eventually it turns from green to red or to yellow or whatever color you planted. There's waiting that's involved there. And God's timing is not always our timing. And sometimes the hardest part of the process is to wait. Wait on God. Look at what it says in verse 25. The Lord is good unto them that wait for Him, to the soul that seeketh Him. It is good that a man should both hope and quietly wait for the salvation of the Lord. Why? Because of the promised payoff. And so there's a painful process. There's a promised payoff. Waiting is always worthwhile. That's what Jeremiah is trying to teach us. He's trying to get us to understand a principle that it is worth the wait. It's worth the wait. Wait on God. The Lord is good unto them that wait for Him. We can wait with courage. Psalm 27:14 says, wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and He shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. We can wait and be lifted and be encouraged. Psalm 37, verse 9, for evildoers shall be cut off, but those that wait upon the Lord, they shall inherit the earth. Verse 34 of that same psalm. Wait on the Lord and keep his way, and he shall exalt thee to inherit the land. When the wicked are cut off, thou shalt see it. Wait and be renewed. Isaiah 40 and verse 31. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Now, that's just 3 verses. But the Bible is full of verses on that principle of waiting on God. Waiting on God. He is worth the wait. What God is doing is worthwhile to wait for it. You know, when we find out that principle, when we begin to understand that principle, we understand that waiting is not wasted. I think that's probably where a lot of us struggle, is that we view that waiting time as wasted time. Well, I could be doing this, and I could be doing that, and I'm spending all this time waiting here, and if this could get done, I could move on to this. And so we think the waiting is wasted, but with God, there's never wasted time. Why? Because we may not see God working during the waiting time, but God's still working. We just can't see the big picture of everything that God can see. And so we have to learn that even in the waiting seasons, even when it's not come to fruition yet, that we just have to trust that God knows what's best. God knows what He's doing. And in that waiting time, if we can get a hold of this principle, that is not wasted time. It is time that God is working during that time. Don't waste those opportunities. Don't waste the difficulties that come into your life. Trust and realize that God is doing something. One person described it this way. It's a modern way of describing it. We want microwave answers, but God works in slow cooker seasons. Now, I like slow cookers. I like crock pot meals. Our kids would kind of gripe sometimes when we did a crock pot meal, but I liked it. You put that stuff in there in the morning, cook all day long while you're at work. You came home, you opened the door. Man, you could smell it as soon as you walked in the door. But that takes a long time. Some things are a lot better cooked that way when they have a long time. Other things, you want it right now. And you stick that in the microwave, and about 30 seconds. You hit that 30-second button. I love that button on the microwave. 30 seconds. If it's not quite there, you hit it again. Now it goes to a minute 30, 2 minutes. I mean, you know how it works. And so, but I'm kind of a microwave person that I like it to happen right now. But there's some meals that are a whole lot better if you cook them slow. Low and slow, right? That's what they tell you. Cook it low and slow. Turn the temperature down a little bit and let that thing cook. We like that with food. We don't always like that with life. With life, we're trying to hit the 30-second button. Just hurry and get it over with. Hurry and get it done. And God's saying, no, this is going to take a while. And so with the process, it is worth the wait. It's good to quietly wait. You know what you're doing when you're quietly waiting? You're trusting. You're saying, God, you've got a plan in this. I don't know what it is, but I'm trusting. God, I haven't learned it yet, but I'm trying to learn it. Lamentations 3, verse 26, it's good that a man should both hope and quietly wait for the salvation of the Lord. And then let me give you the last one. God develops our potential. God develops our potential. In verse 27, it is good for a man that he bear the yoke in his youth. You've maybe heard this quote before. You can probably finish it. Smooth seas do not make for skillful sailors. Right? We've got to have some problems. We've got to have some difficulties. That's how you grow. That's part of the process. If everything were smooth sailing, when there came a problem, you wouldn't know what to do. And so we grow through difficulty. Something breaks. I texted Brother Mike Ross the other day, and he said, we'll adapt. And I thought, as soon as he sent that to me, I was like, that's the Marine in Brother Mike. I know it. Adapt to the situation. Right, Bradley? He'll figure a way out. He'll adapt. And we got to adapt. I mean, there are times we got to be flexible. It didn't work that way. Okay, what's the next way? And we, as a dad, every dad kind of enjoys that, right? There's something broke, and the kids bring it to us. We've got to figure out a way. We've got to fix it. And we're trying to put it together, and sometimes it doesn't. Anyway, I'll get distracted again. So, but there's problems. There's a process that we have to work through those things. It's good. It is good. Notice what Jeremiah said. It's good that for a man that he bear the yoke in his youth. It's good for a man. There's nothing wrong with having some problems. There's nothing wrong with some difficulty. There's nothing wrong with bearing up under the burden. They would work. They'd get in that yoke, and they'd work their fields. It's good for you to work. God, he has things that he wants to teach us through that. And Jeremiah was thanking God for what he brought him through. Now, we're all different ages in the auditorium tonight. But no matter what age you're at, you can think back of some of the things that you've went through, not the most desirable. And Jeremiah had went through some of those things in his life, and he was at a point in his life where he was able to look back and even what seemed like bad and say, God, thank you for bringing me through that. Why? Because even in the bad times, Jeremiah had learned some things. Joseph, he told his brothers at the end of his life, Genesis chapter 50, he said, ye meant it unto evil, but God meant it unto good. Now, I don't know that Joseph could have said that when he was a young man, but Joseph was able to say that when he was an old man. He said, you meant it unto evil. Joseph didn't know what was going to happen. Joseph didn't know when those men bought him and even probably where he was carried to, and when he got bought by Potiphar, what was going to happen. And then when he got lied about by Potiphar's wife and he's thrown into prison. I mean, just one thing after another. But Joseph got to a point in his life where he realized that all of that was necessary because God was using every one of those things to make Joseph into the person that he was. Jeremiah realized that God took everything that happened in his life and he used it for a purpose. He was thanking God for what he had brought him through. And you can have some bad things that have happened to you in your life, but you can get to the point spiritually where you look back and say, God, even that part, thank you for that, because it was through that that it helped to make me who I am today. And Jeremiah was thankful for even the process of God growing him and developing him. A weightlifter, someone who exercises, knows that muscles only grow through resistance. I had my shoulder surgery, and the physical therapist, he said, we're going to start doing weights. And he brings over, I'm not exaggerating, he brings over this weight, it's about this long, it's pink. And it had a number 1 on it, 1 pound. And he handed that to me, and he goes, okay, here's where we're going to start. And he had me doing curls with that little pink 1 pound barbell. And actually, after about 10 of them, I was glad that he had only brought the pink one, the number 1. And a couple days later at therapy, he brought me the number 5. I'm like, man, I'm hitting the big time now. 5-pounder. And I start curling that 5-pounder. But I know the process. I've exercised before. You've got to have resistance to strengthen that muscle. Right? Now, if a weightlifter understands that, a Christian can understand that there's some strengthening that God has to do in our spiritual life. There's some training that God has to do in our spiritual life. And sometimes it's the resistance and it's the problems that help us to grow the way that we need to. Another way of stating this principle is that when you earn something, you appreciate it. Boy, we liked, when the kids were little, we liked making them work for a little bit of money. They were saving up for something, and we'd give, that toy that they earned, they appreciated that toy a lot more than one that had just been given to them. But one that they had to earn, one that they had to work for, and they saved those dollar bills up until they got enough dollar bills to be able to go pay for it, and then they had to give all those dollar bills to the store so that they could get that toy. But when you earn something, when you really work for it, what do we all know? You appreciate it a lot more. You appreciate it a lot more than if it had just been given to you. Jeremiah had to learn to depend on God. Dependence on God is developed. Growth requires determination. All those things are true. We've got to learn to depend on God. And our dependence on God, it doesn't just happen. God doesn't just give it to us. He teaches us. And the more things that happen, the more we learn we can depend on Him. The more we learn that He's faithful. The more that we get to the point where we say, like Jeremiah, great is thy faithfulness. I can trust God with anything because He is a faithful God. He has never let me down. He's always been there. Our dependence grows. It's developed in our life. And then growth requires determination. Sometimes you just got to stick in there. And you stay faithful to God. He's going to stay faithful to you, but you just determine, I'm going to stay faithful to Him. And then the last thing we see is the design of a good father. God is a good and a gracious father. A good father teaches and trains his children. And there's all kinds of things that we could talk about. But every lesson that God has for us is a good lesson. I'm thankful for things that my mom taught me. I'm thankful for things that my dad taught me. Thankful for things I can remember that my grandma and my grandpa taught me. And those are good lessons. But you know what I'm also thankful for? The lessons that God has taught me. There have been lessons that some of them were painful. Some of them hurt. but I can look back and I can remember what God was trying to teach me. And I finally got to the point where I learned the lesson. God's discipline, though, is not to hurt us, it's to help us. God is never bringing something into your life to see if He can crush you. Now, it may sometimes feel like it, right? Sometimes we're bearing up underneath a burden. We're like, I don't know if I can take any more. But God's not giving us more than we can bear. He will make a way to escape. I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. You know what He is teaching you to do? Learn to depend on Him. Casting all your care upon Him, for He cares for you. I don't have to carry all this. I learn to give it to Him, and He bears our burdens. Maturity is built over time, not overnight. It's a process. Every parent, you see your children make decisions, and you think, whew, we're not complete failures. They got that one right. And so you think, we're doing something right as parents. Maybe not everything, but we got something right. And maturity is built over time. It doesn't happen overnight. It took you a while to mature. It took me a while to mature. Maybe we're still in that process. We're still maturing, and we're still growing. God's developing us. Biblical training, though, produces lasting results. Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he'll not depart from it. I found this quote from John Newton. He's the one that was a slave trader. He got saved. Later, he would write that hymn, Amazing Grace, probably one of the most well-known of all the hymns. He said this. It is a tremendous quote on this subject. He said, everything is needful that He sends. Nothing can be needful that He withholds. Well, you get a hold of that quote. Everything is needful that He sends. If God sent it into my life, there's some reason that I needed it. Well, that'll change. That will transform you. Instead of griping about the situation, instead of complaining about what you're going through, you realize that, okay, for some reason, God saw that this was needful in my life. Now, what it is that He's trying to teach you, I don't know exactly, but I believe that principle is true, that everything is needful that He sends, and nothing can be needful that He withholds. You ever wanted something so badly? I want that, and I'm even praying about it. God, but if He withholds it from you, you didn't need it. It was best for you that you didn't have it. Nothing that He withholds is needful. Jeremiah's conclusion in the book of Lamentations is simple yet powerful. God is a good God. That's a very simple thought, but it's a powerful conclusion that we come to. God is a good God. I hope that in your life that you've already come to the conclusion. If not, I pray that you would be able to come to the conclusion in your life, that you'd look back and you say, I can conclude this. I know this for a fact. God is a good God. He has been good in my life. He learned that God is always enough. He learned that God is always faithful. He learned that God is always on time, that God is always at work. And may we, like Jeremiah, trust His goodness, rest in His faithfulness, wait on His timing, and grow through His process. Say, God, we're trusting You because You're a good God. Let's go ahead and stand tonight, if you would. I ask you to bow your head, close your eyes.